All right, hey, welcome back to Four Boxes. I appreciate you being here. I'm glad you came back for the discussion on liberty. We already talked about what the four boxes are. I gave you the four boxes of liberty in the inaugural video, and then I gave you a small taste of what each box is about and what they mean. And for those that may not have seen anything before, the four boxes are the concept of the four boxes of liberty. The four different boxes we use as Americans to protect our liberty. Those are the soapbox, the ballot box, the jury box, and the cartridge box. And please use in that order. It's always followed by that caveat when listing the four. But in any case, so somebody asked me, what about talking about liberty? And of course, I planned that all along, but I thought it was great that someone asked it because it's important to know. I mean, what are you protecting? If you don't understand liberty, you don't understand what it is, you don't know when someone's taking it. You don't know what it is. You probably aren't exercising it, and you don't understand why we protect it, why it's important to protect it for. So anyways, that's what this is about. But before we go any further, I'd like to ask you, please, do me a favor. I don't think I'm going to get rich off this. I don't think I'm going to get famous off of it. The whole point of this, why I put an effort and time into this, is to spread these concepts so that Americans, for the last couple generations, have had a woefully inept historical education and civics education. And our government and a lot of people in power and the media and so forth have sort of twisted a lot of these concepts in ways that we don't realize. You don't realize what you're missing, like I said, until you understand it. So, anyways, that's what this is about. This whole series, this whole channel is going to be about that, and sort of just re-educating us, including me. I'm learning all the time too. So. Anyways, this one's about liberty. Please share, like, subscribe, let your friends know either verbally or via links and so forth on different social media. But spread the word. Let's get the word out there. So anyways, without any further ado, liberty, what is it? Why is it important? Where does it come from? If you want to learn more, I'd like to refer you to a book called Liberty and Freedom, ironically enough, by a guy named David Hackett Fischer. David Hackett Fischer is a historical author. He's had many great books. He dissects the concepts of liberty and freedom early in the book to say, where do these concepts come from? Where do we get them? They don't come out of nowhere. So, make a long story short, it's two primary sources. The Greek version, which we get from ancient Greece, as well as the Northern Europe, northern tribes, sort of what we would think of more as your Vikings, your Scandinavians. There's sort of a couple different versions of where those words come from, and they all boil down to a couple concepts. And those are either one, a collective version. In other words, in the northern European tribes, the Scandinavians, they talked a lot about one tribe was free from the control of another tribe. So you weren't necessarily free to do whatever you want within your own tribe, but you had freedom, you had a voice at the council, and so forth. Their version of kings, their war chiefs, their chieftains, weren't all powerful. They weren't authoritarians in that sense. So totalitarians. So then you have the Greek version, which had a couple connotations too, which was maybe a little more of what we think of as liberty. You get to do what you want kind of thing. But even then, it was very stratified. Only certain people had liberty. Slaves obviously didn't have liberty. Greeks and Romans had slaves. They didn't have liberty. They didn't have freedom. So there's these convoluted concepts that changed throughout time. And then when it became the British version, you had the Celts to the equation. They had another sort of concept of it. Then you get to the point of pre-American Revolution, the liberties of the free Englishmen. Is what our founders were probably most familiar with, maybe not, sort of arguable there. But anyways, there's a bunch of different concepts all come together to get us to where our founding is. Now, I could talk about the way we use the words today. I could say that, but when you're trying to say, let's get our country back, let's take us back to our liberties, let's stop infringement on our liberties, we got to have a basis. There's got to be a foundation for what are we trying to get back? Where are we trying to go back to? To me, that's our founding. That's who we are, and it's like an anchor. When you take an anchor post and you tie a dog out in the yard or whatever, he can stray within that distance, but he can't stray past it. It's anchored. And to me, that's what our founding and our Constitution is. It's an anchor. Can we move around within some of the definitions of the words legitimately? Yes. Can we, as old school Republicans, old school Democrats, disagree on some of what those may be? Absolutely, not a problem. But you can't go there's only so far you can go, and then you've broken the anchor. You've come unmoored from the anchor, from the pier. And so that's what we're talking about here. So to me, the concepts of what those meant to our founding and what they mean in our founding documents and the origins of our nation is what I want to get back to. I want to use those as my anchor to stick to something meaningful, something that as we twist words and as words change through our history, there's something to go back to. Also, there's the Christian concept of liberty, which is virtue and morality, and the Christian version, of course, belief in Jesus Christ gives you a freedom from sin. And then, so all of these come together to our founding. So, for instance, some of our founders, there's a quote says, our system, freedom is only legitimate for a virtuous people. For instance, you need self-discipline to be free. Otherwise, your government's going to write laws to restrict your freedom because guess what? You can't control yourself. So there's a lot of concepts all intermingled in modern concepts of liberty and freedom from the time of our founding to now. So anyways, let's see, we talked about that. I told you about the book Liberty and Freedom by David Hackett Fisher. It is not a light Sunday afternoon read, but however, if you really want to dive into it, that is, in my opinion, the best place to dive. So look, I am looking at notes, so I don't want to act like I'm trying to hide that fact. Just wanted to make sure I stayed on topic here, didn't ramble too much. But okay, so let's talk about the founders and freedom and collective versus individual. So when we were founded, of course, the Declaration of Independence, we stated our freedom from a country that controlled us at the time, Great Britain. We said we are now independent of Great Britain. Now, at the time we said that, we weren't a nation. We were 13 nations. And those United States, those United Nations, said to England, you no longer own any of us. We are now free of you. So our nation became free from Great Britain. Then, of course, we created the federal government. States are free or should be free from federal control. And individuals should be free from state or federal control as much as possible. That is our system. When we talk about freedom from, that's the way I think of freedom. When I think of the definitions in my words, freedom is freedom from something. Not a strict definition, just the way I tend to think about it. So, United States is free from Great Britain. Currently, we're free from the rest of the world, except for the ways we allow treaties and so forth to govern us in our relations with other nations. But we are a sovereign nation. The states are designed to be sovereign states within the federal system. And the individual is designed to be sovereign within the construct of that system as much as possible. So you kind of got to go with me here. I don't have a whiteboard, but here's the way I analyze current politics and whether someone's on the right or the left. I try not to stick with the current ways of thinking, right versus left. Here's what I think. On this end, we have zero control, which would be anarchy. And you got a line all the way here. To this end, you've got total control. Trying to figure out my orientation here. You've got total control, which would be totalitarianism. In the middle are different degrees of how much individual freedom a person has within a system of government. So within that line, right, I like to think our founders were just a little bit above anarchy with as little control as possible over the individual. They were firm believers in individual liberties, individual freedoms. So, however, I think the current Republican and Democrat parties are somewhere in here, with Democrat being much more further along the control lines. But I'm not going to give the Republicans a pass either. They are always for more control as well. Libertarians tend to be maybe a little less control, except, that those concepts seem to be breaking down in our current politics too, but that's a whole other story. So anyways, we're talking about freedom, and liberty is literally zero control. Founders said, okay, that's not going to work. You got to have some control that allows protection for the individual. And that's what our Constitution says. It's created, let's see here, let me see if I can go to that page real quick. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure, hold, guard, the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. In other words, we had to find a government, we had to figure out a government that would allow that government to secure our liberties. Not secure us, secure our liberties. So that's what's pretty important there, is that you understand our system is designed to allow our liberties to flourish, to allow our liberties to reap blessings upon us. So that comes through people making individual choices. So we've got individuals should be free from the states as much as possible, and the federal government. The states should be free from the federal government as much as possible, and the federal government must remain free from outside control. So that's the concept, is that all liberty exists with the people. We, the people, gave a little bit of it up to the states and said, okay, form us state governments. You're our representatives, form us state governments and run our small cultures, our small regions, our small communities. Help us run them and secure the blessings of liberty, et cetera, et cetera. Then the states said, okay, we got to have somebody that's above all of the states to help us do things that we can't do individually, like provide a military, coins, and currency, provide a navy, provide all kinds of little things like that. That is what's referred to as the enumerated powers in the Constitution. The Constitution, written by the states, lists out or enumerates, lists out specific things the federal government's allowed to do. There are only a few of retaining as many liberties and freedoms as possible at the lowest level is how our founders thought that they would disperse control, disperse power. Almost in all of our system is designed to do that, to not allow any one part to have a lot of control. You know, the three branches of government, those are supposed to be jealous of each other. They're supposed to try to hold on to their power and not allow any of the other branches to get it. That was intentionally designed to keep any one group from having too much power, the legislative, judicial, or the executive branch. Then you've got the states had power over the federal government in some ways, and the federal government had power over the states in other ways. That's another one. You had the media designed to be a watchdog, protected in the First Amendment. You had the people, another version. You had the states, the people, and the media, in my opinion, form another little triumvirate of power that's supposed to disperse power and keep it away and out of the hands of any specific group as well. So a lot of it is about dispersion of power. And that's a ton of what our entire system is about. So by keeping liberty in the hands of, as much as possible in the hands of the people, and only giving a little bit up to the states, and what the states were given or delegated to them, they only had a little bit to give to create a federal government. Slowly, over 242 years, we've allowed the federal government to amass more and more and more power over the states and therefore over us. So the idea of liberty is to pull power away from any concentration of it, including the people. If the people gain too much, that's why I constantly say we are not a democracy, and we are not. We are a republic. A democracy, the people could get together, vote a certain thing, and even though they are totally violating the liberties of a minority or even the majority, they would be allowed to do that if they could get enough votes. And that's why we are not a democracy. We are here, our system is designed to protect liberty, to secure the blessings of liberty. Liberty is the opposite of control. You have to understand who's going to decide in your life when you buy a car, a toilet, a light bulb, a roll of paper towels, whatever we do in our ordinary daily lives. Who decides? Who decides where you can go, what you can do? Most of our lives, the things we treasure the most, that we put the most stock in, we still control them. For instance, we can go to the mall when we want, we can travel, go on vacation when we want. We can, we got our iPhones in our hands all day. We're on social media, we do all this all the time, and we feel free. But try to do something like start a business and find out how free you aren't. On the way to make this video today, I saw several people selling watermelons and farm goods and stuff on the side of the road, and saw a flea market and so forth. And I thought, those are still the biggest maybe examples of freedom we have today. But you know what? In some towns, some cities, some jurisdiction, lots of that is clamped down on. We are not as free as we ought to be, as we are designed to be. We need to protect our liberties jealously. We do those with the 4 boxes. We do those with the soap box, the ballot box, the jury box, and hopefully never, but if we need to, the cartridge box. Very, very important we understand what liberty is. Begin to look around your life and understand how much liberty we don't have. For instance, here's what I want you to do. Think about who decides. when you do things? Who decides? Some of that's totally legitimate. For instance, speed limit laws. Sure, our representatives decided through us, the ballot box, they pass laws and we have speed limits. So there are certain things that should be decided by a government, and those are the legitimate delegated powers. So you got to begin to analyze in your own life, what are legitimate delegated powers? I will tell you, there's a couple examples I want to give that we hear a lot that are about taking freedom or not consistent with liberty, and that I want to bring up. Some of this will be slightly controversial to you, but that's okay. It's about teaching, and I want you to think. If you disagree with me, say so. Think about it. Come back 6 months and tell me if you disagree or still disagree with me, or agree or disagree. But there's a concept, and I've seen articles on this, said there ought to be a law. Whenever you see something going on, or you see something going on, and you hear people say there ought to be a law to stop that, they shouldn't be allowed to do that. Think about it. Should there really be a law? Should we really ask the government? Should we really ask Big Brother to come in and control that person or that thing for us? Or should we exercise our power as a voice, as a society, not through government and not through laws, through our dollars, through our voices, through our patronage of businesses, or moral support of businesses even. That's usually what you hear this about businesses. There ought to be a law, there ought to be a law. And it's always about, we want our government to come in and restrict somebody else in some way. Sometimes that's legitimate, sometimes it's not. And I'm sure we can sit around and agree and disagree all day on what those are. But you need to think about them. You need to understand liberty. Because remember, every time you restrict somebody else's liberty, you're also restricting yours. You also cannot do anything that you want somebody else stopped from doing either. And you got to understand the repercussions of that. Another thing I want you to understand, and it just segued right into it. In order to have liberty, you must allow liberty. This goes right to the concept of live and let live. This is a much more libertarian concept of liberty. If you want to be free to do things and make your own decisions, you must allow it to others. And quite often, that's going to be things that annoy you. That's going to be things that downright go against your morals and your ethics, maybe. Businesses that make a lot of money in something and then just, move on or whatever. There's all kinds of examples. We could do that for all day. But, the thing that gets on me the most is local ordinances, like, having grass cut, and you can't have a certain kind of mobile home on certain properties. Those things, to me, are very anti-liberty. We could talk about, are cities allowed to do those, and are those still truly liberty? Maybe, because you choose to live in a city or not, so there's some discussion there to be had. But I want you to learn to analyze it. That's my point. Analyze liberty. Is somebody restricting liberty? And are they doing that through a majority of people? A majority of people vote for something, therefore someone else's liberty is restricted. To me, that's not okay. I want to always err on the side of allowing liberty. So anyways, we talked a lot about liberty. I want to tell you just one final thing here. We'll talk, so think about what I've said about being free from foreign governments, being free from federal government, being free from states, as we go down the line to individual liberty. The Ninth Amendment to the Constitution, we all know about the First Amendment, we hear about the Second Amendment all the time, we hear about the Fourth and Fifth, but we don't hear about the Ninth and Tenth hardly at all. Let me tell you about the Ninth. The enumeration in the Constitution, remember that? That's the listing. The listing in the Constitution of certain rights, the Bill of Rights, shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So here's a common problem too, and rights are liberties in a sense, with some vague differences. By listing our rights in the Bill of Rights, some of the founders were afraid that it would be thought of later as, wait a minute, these are the only rights that people have, that's why we listed them. But it's quite the opposite. They listed the ones they thought most likely to be infringed on by a federal government, so they added the Ninth Amendment saying the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed or disparaged or disparage others retained by the people. So in other words, our rights are innumerable. Thousands and thousands of rights and liberties we have. For instance, this morning I chose what I wanted to eat. They didn't need to list that one. I still have that right, and the government has no right to come in and tell me I can't choose what I want to eat for breakfast, for instance. Now the 10th Amendment, let's hit a little intro on that. The power is not delegated to the United States. Now you gotta remember who's writing this. This is a group of states writing this and ratifying it. The power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states. In other words, powers we didn't give the United States and powers that we didn't prohibit by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. So in other words, we only gave you these listed rights. Ones we didn't give to you and ones we prohibited you to have are retained by us, the states, or by the people. And that's what we've been talking about, liberty and being free from the federal government. Right now, the biggest encroachment on liberty is the federal government of the United States of America, not the states. Are there abuses all over the country on states abusing liberties also? Sure, absolutely, and towns and villages and everything else. But the biggest abuser by far is the federal government. You've got to begin to learn these things. You've got to be a voice. If you believe in these things like I do, if you want to change things, you've got to be a voice. We see what's happening currently in American politics. Donald Trump's president. We got this collusion allegations. We got all these crazy things. Those loud voices in the media, those loud voices in pop culture and pop media, we've got to get louder than them. And this is my meager little attempt, okay? So if you're not a voice, if you can't or don't feel comfortable talking like I do, then share it. If you do, then learn from me and you repeat it. Don't worry about me. I'm not trying to get rich off this. I'm trying to teach, I'm trying to educate, and help spread these words. So I know I ramble a little bit, but I did take some notes today, so I wouldn't ramble too much. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you wouldn't mind leaving me comments, let me know what you think. I'd appreciate it. Oh, by the way, the backdrop today is the town of Ironton, Ohio. There's a nice viewing platform up above the town, and I just thought it would make a nice backdrop for now while the weather's still warm and I'm doing this outdoors. So in any case, thank you very much for watching. This is the much longer video than the others, but it had a ton more information in it. So let me know what you think. Like, share, subscribe, watch it, get notifications so you can be notified every time I have a video, and let's spread the word, okay? Thanks a lot.